Hello, everybody, and welcome to MAD Security's webinar series. My name is Cliff Neve, and I'll be your moderator today. Today's webinar is about bringing security to compliance, and in particular, DoD compliance as it pertains to the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification and DFARS with the Department of Defense. We have our MAD Security experts here to go through it. Our first panelist is Don Sumner, our Vice President of Sales. Don has 25 years of experience providing solutions to clients ranging from one-person businesses to Fortune 50 organizations. Don's been with MAD Security for 4 years. Prior to that, he was with Dell SecureWorks as a leader in the sales organization. Next is Jeremy Conway, MAD Security's president. Jeremy has been in cybersecurity for about 25 years. He's what I call a truly legit cyber expert. He was instrumental in building the NASA Security Operations Center. He was also lead researcher for Nitro Security, which became what is today the McAfee SIM. He's designed dozens of courses for the Hacker Academy in penetration testing, reverse engineering, incident response, security operations. Finally, I'm Cliff Neve, MAD's Chief Operating Officer. I have 26 years of experience in IT and cybersecurity. I've served 24 years in the Coast Guard and retired as the Acting Deputy Commander of Coast Guard Cyber Command. Since joining MAD Security in 2013, I've led hundreds of risk assessments for Fortune 50 companies down to one-person companies. As a veteran-owned business and as one of the CMMC Accreditation Board's registered provider organizations, MAD Security takes the protection of controlled, unclassified information very seriously, and we're happy to be able to talk to you today to raise the awareness of security of sensitive government information. If you have questions at any time, please feel free to type them into the box and we'll answer them. And at this point in time, I'd like to kick this off with a poll. And the poll question is, how many of you are familiar with DFARS, CMMC, or the Supplier Performance Risk System scoring system with DoD? I'll give you all a few minutes to answer. Okay, a couple more seconds and I'll close this out. Okay, so we have a decent mix. About half said they're very familiar, but you have work to do. A quarter said somewhat familiar, and a quarter said not very familiar or not at all familiar. No one said that they're familiar and have a good NIST 800 score. So we're happy to help provide some information that might be helpful for that today. So some of you are familiar, as we say, and that said, Don, can you please talk through a little bit about CMMC and provide us just a quick overview?
Yeah, absolutely. So just about everybody knows, or most people know, that CMMC, the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification, has 5 maturity levels, and those handling controlled unclassified information, or CUI, are really going to be looking at level 3. Level 1 is going to be required of everybody except for COTS providers, but no CUI. So if you get to level 3, if you have CUI, if you have current DFARS clauses in your contracts, then probably level 3 is what you'll be looking at. Now, the difference between level 1 and level 3 is huge. These 110 controls in NIST 171 plus 20 more, 130 controls level 3, 17 controls in level 1. So it's a big difference in the effort. There won't be a ton of contractors in level 4 and level 5, really. I mean, but a lot of that is about maturity. So that could develop, I think, over time as more contractors become more and more familiar. The other thing I will bring up is that there has been some talk about a CMMC 2.0 that's being worked on. I've heard some of the contractor clients that I work with, take that as CMMC is kind of in the air situation. I think what we know, we focus on what we know. What we know is that the foundation of CMMC level 3 is NIST at 171. Well, foundation of really all of them. And that's 110 controls. That's really not going to change. So that is what we know. And that's kind of where we are right now.
Excellent. Thanks, Don. So because you work so regularly with clients, what kinds of things are you seeing as it pertains to how they're handling security versus compliance? Is it one and the same, and are they handling it as though security and compliance are one and the same?
So interestingly, not always. Now we always start out with a company, talking with them, asking a lot of questions, try to figure out what their individual circumstance is. Try not to lead with a solution when it comes to how they're going to handle CMMC. And I think some companies have a really good plan for security compliance. Some, they've done some analysis, they understand what they're facing. Some really don't have a good plan and are kind of looking for one. One of the biggest differences, though, that I see in kind of general approach is the difference between chasing a check mark, which would be the easiest and quickest way possible to complete some of the controls and requirements, or aligning with the spirit of why compliance exists in the first place. It exists to give us a framework so we can increase our cybersecurity posture and decrease risk to ourselves and to the federal government. And so that's why I say not always, as far as security compliance being the same. Is I think they kind of should be. Compliance should be a good framework to reach a more secure state, but there still are some that aren't making that same kind of connection and thinking more about how do I more quickly check the box, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It does. So when you're talking to these clients, is there a discovery process, a collaboration plan that you take them through or try to take them through to kind of demonstrate the difference between compliance and security so that they can see which direction they're going?
Well, that's absolutely part of it. I mean, we absolutely want to help figure out, first of all, make sure that we're maturing the security overall and make sure we're helping with that. And then second, just really make sure that what we put forth is going to be, aligned with business goals and the real situation. So none of this is one size fits all.
Thanks, Don. And so now I want to turn to Jeremy and get his thoughts on compliance versus security.
So, we've all heard the saying that you can be compliant and not secure. And some of us believe that that is a fact. Some of us believe that you can use compliance to be secure, right? So it is definitely something that you choose to do. We are forced to be compliant. We know what the check mark requires for us to do to be compliant and to configure in our infrastructure, or to have a sign-in sheet, at physical security, these types of things. And there's maybe there is a sign-in sheet at the door, and maybe 8 out of 10 times somebody uses that sign-in sheet. So we're probably meeting when we get our audit and we're compliant. But are you actually secure? Are we vetting the people's answers? Are they U.S. citizens when they come in? Are you looking at IDs? Are they actually who they say they are? Is there a purpose to their meeting? Those types of things. It's not just the technical controls out there. The technical controls get you even a little more. But yeah, there is definitely a difference between compliance and security. But I think what generally across the board, as we can say, is if you are compliant, it doesn't necessarily mean you're secure, but if you're secure, you should be pretty compliant. And compliance gives you a really good baseline if you are trying to understand how to be secure. I think I lost my audio.
No, you didn't. It wouldn't be a Mad Security webinar if I wasn't fighting my way off mute at least once. So,
okay, thanks.
so Jeremy, thanks for that. And can you talk a little bit about how to build a strategy of both security and compliance? Where does that start, and where does that happen in the organization, and how do you look into that?
I kind of hinted to that at the beginning, right? And it's you can choose to check a box, or you can choose to be secure, or you can choose to do both. And the reality is that even if you choose to be secure and you're doing the compliance things, there's this this maturity. You have to continually improve upon the process. You have to continually, look at it and say, hey, threats have evolved, changes have happened. Sure, I checked the box, and I have, let's say, an intrusion detection device. I have sandboxing, right? We all know sandboxing is this new control that's in the CMMC thing that has to be for emails and things. I've got it on. Great. Have you tuned it? Or is everything just, being inspected and alerted there, right? Those types of things, right? So yes, when the auditor comes in, I'm compliant. Here's the big deal that always, me as a president of a company that's chartered to do cybersecurity and stuff, this one kind of dumbfounds me all the time. And that is, small businesses, we just don't have a lot of funds to be throwing around at certain things and stuff. And if you're going to be compliant, you're going to spend the money to do it. Wouldn't you also want to be secure and kind of make sure that that money is well used and kind of things like that? I think sometimes we step back and we think about that kind of thing. It just makes a lot of sense to, be secure if we're going to have to do the compliance anyways. Like there's nobody out there that's going to get out of it. If you're going to do contracting with the DIB, and if we look at it, the FAR is coming after this, and there's other businesses. And I mean, look, the reality is this is not new. Standardization, compliance mandates is not new. CMMI did it for software. We're seeing it now for cybersecurity, and it's a good thing. You can't run from it. And if you're going to do it, you're going to spend the money and the time and the resources and stuff for it. Creating a good strategy, and not just a security strategy, right? Like, oh, how am I going to be more secure? But why wouldn't the security strategy be embedded in your growth strategy, your revenue generation strategy? So if you're in business to build widgets, right? Well, that widget is dependent upon some warfighter that has it in his tank. And if you get hacked and he can't get it while he's out in some war, there's a problem, right? That's the kind of thing you got to think about. So it's part of your business model to make sure that you can always make those widgets, even when we're under attack, even when we're at the worst kind of thing. So, I think it's a differentiator. I think people are getting their minds shifted a little bit, but it shouldn't just be a cybersecurity strategy. It should literally be a business strategy where cybersecurity helps enable that. That makes sense, Cliff?
It does. And, what I want to do now too is kind of talk about some of the controls specifically. And, when we look at our SOC as a service, that we provide, we see that, it supports like 90 of the 130 CMMC level 3 requirements and 86 of 110 NIST 800-171 requirements. So clearly security operations is a foundation to that. But in simply meaning the letter of the law, those requirements, you're missing out on things. So what I'd like to do, if that's okay, is go ahead and throw up a couple of very specific controls. Let's see, show screen. Okay. So I think I can make this bigger. If not, then I can talk through it. There we go, magnified. Oops, that was way too big. All right, so we have a couple of controls here. Can everybody see I'm not sure what everybody's seeing, so hopefully everybody's seeing. It
doesn't really magnify it on our side. I think you might have to talk to it. Are you listening? Yeah, go ahead. I think we could talk to it though.
Okay, so let's go ahead and talk through it. So we have several controls that are about in the 3.3 section, right? So what we have 3.3.2 and they talk about logging. And so can you talk about the differences between how you would log with a managed security service, vice how folks might do that in an ad hoc fashion?
I mean, fundamentally, they should be the same, but I think that's what you're kind of getting at here, right? So when we review these controls, right, and like you said, there are 90 controls that we have in the maturity of our SOC have developed that we believe meet 90 of the 130 level 3 requirements for that. And how that happened is we understand these controls very well, right? So for example, 3.3.3 that you had on your screen, it says review and update logged events, and if somebody just kind of read that, they'd be like, what do you mean update logged events? What does that mean? Like when we review it? Well, yeah, we review our logs. When something happens, we'll go in and we'll go check it out. We'll see, hey, why this is error and that kind of stuff. You know, is there real time reviewing, right? Is there somebody looking at these things in real time? And here's the honest to goodness truth. Our SOC as a service, nobody's looking at every single event in real time. Why? Because there's hundreds of thousands of millions of events that are coming in at us. So we have to create systems and maturity in it. And we have, you know, artificial intelligence. We have, you know, threat feeds. We have all these things that tell us what's important and correlate stuff and aggregate data to us and show us anomalies and all that. And that's a very mature practice. So yeah, we're reviewing them as a service, and we're able to do that. And we've gotten that all configured very, very well. Where, you know, where somebody else may just buy a syslog server or something and, you know, just have a log repository that they're then manually going in and things, right? So it's just a different maturity level. And that's really what, you know, CMMC is about, and these controls are about, is being able to be actionable on this stuff. That's that checkbox again, right? I can deploy a server, you know, an open source server, and I could pay no dollars for it. Storage is cheap. I mean, you could, if you wanted to, you could get, you know, one off of eBay, I guess, and you buy like this giant terabyte drive and then mirror it. Then you got redundancy, and, you know, then copy it up to Amazon Cloud, and now you've got, you know, 2 places, right? You could probably check the box somehow to do this stuff in a very cheap kind of manner, but it's very inefficient. And I think you spend more time trying to engineer your way around it being cheap than if you just did it the right way. And we've learned how to do it the right way in a very efficient way, because we truly believe that, you know, this compliance thing, you can be secure. So in our reviewing the logs, we're enriching them, we're doing all that stuff. The interesting part of this is the second part, which is update logging. You're like, okay, so how do you update logging? We don't control logs. What they're talking about there is these sources of information, they update their logs, right? So when you went from Windows 7 to Windows 10, authentication logs for like Kerberos ticketing and some other things like that may change event IDs, may change message things, may give more detail, and they enrich their stuff all the time. Well, if you're using an old correlation rule or an old, you know, a parser to this, it could cause problems in your logging mechanism, right? And that's where a secure, you know, service like a SOC, we're responding to that in real time. We see that happen. We have controls in place that say, oh, look, that log's not parsing anymore. And an analyst gets on it immediately and starts changing the rules so that we can see it immediately, right? In a regular organization, what would that take? That'd be 6 months, 6 years? I mean, the average detection of a compromise in an organization that does their own security, doesn't have a third-party provider, I mean, you can get the Verizon port yourself. It's 6 months, it's 9 months, right? So the data's not telling you any different. Interesting enough, if you look at the same Verizon port, people that have third parties, it's about half the time. Sometimes it's 2 and 3 months, you know? That goes into some other integration things that we'll probably talk about later in here with incident response and threat hunting and stuff like that. But you know, you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot if you don't use this chance and this mandate. If you're looking at it as like this cost and this thing that I just have to do and I'm just going to check the box and I'll deal with it later, I think you're going to put yourself in a weird predicament, you know, 2 or 3, 4, 5 years from the road, where you kind of look back and be like, maybe I should have just done this right out the gate. So that's kind of my answer. Cliff, you want me to explain anything else?
No, I think that's good. I think also, you know, the point that, you know, instead of using logs after the fact, after an incident's occurred, is the way I see a lot of people do it. When I talk to people, especially if folks are using managed service providers, right? Those folks who are using managed service providers who aren't managed security service providers, they will say, yes, we're logging everything. It's like, okay, so when do you check the logs? If there's an incident, we check the logs. And it's like, well, no, that's not the way to do it. The way to do it is to search the logs to uncover incidents, because
Sure.
Especially those folks flying in low and slow and advanced persistent threats. So Jeremy, I know you have a lot of experience with parsing through logs, tons more than I ever had. So can you talk a little bit about what that looks like?
Yeah, so I mean, your average, you know, Active Directory server, you know, is producing, you know, an SMB business, somebody that has say 300 employees, it's probably producing on the order of 50 to 70 events per second, right? And those events per second average out to about, you know, 1,500 bytes in a database, right? And you start adding this all up and you're like, holy crap, 70 times 60 times 60 minutes, that's an hour, times 24 hours a day. What am I going to do with all this data? So parsing after the fact is a good incident response mechanism, and you should have the storage and things like that. as well. But let's face it, somebody compromised your Active Directory, drops your passwords, and you want to go and investigate that. Would you have rather had the indicator in real time as it was going, if like something just didn't seem right in your Active Directory, and then start to do that log? Or are you going to wait until, I don't know, you get some kind of transaction in your bank account or something? You're like, oh, where did it go to? And you do root cause analysis, and 7 months later, you realize that, hey, there was an event in my Active Directory that was underneath the 7 terabytes of data that I have for the last year that I could have uncovered and spent a lot of money just trying to do it. So it is exactly that. You can be compliant. I'm logging data. I get it. You're logging data, and it's there, and you're positioned well, not perfectly, to go back and look at it and review and figure out what happened. But who wants to learn afterwards when some of these indicators should be happening in real time? And that's the difference between, like, say somebody setting up a log server and meeting compliance and dealing with logs versus somebody actually making that stuff actionable. It's coming in, we are enriching it, we are adding to it, we are reviewing it, we are correlating it, we have anomaly detection. We're looking at things not only in like 15-minute increments, but 24-hour differences. And that 24-hour block, is it the same as it was last month, the same day, right? This type of anomaly, that's not built into or easy for any analyst to do when that kind of stuff is happening all over the place, right? So that's also likely why we have so many folks that, when they are doing this logging stuff, that they don't detect it for, 5-6 months, maybe a year later, that these compromises are here, because those indicators aren't seen as they're coming in, as they're being discovered. They're seen after the fact when somebody has complained of, like, anomaly on a system, or a transaction has occurred, or there's missing data, or, somebody, heaven forbid, a 3-letter organization's contacted you and said, hey, you've got your stuff sitting on some server and it's up for sale on the dark web. This is not good. Or they see that, somebody's talking to a known bad host, right? And that type of thing. Or there's honeypot organizations out there that, notify you that, hey, you've got a host that's talking to something that is bad. And then you go and investigate it after the fact. It takes hours and hours of man hours to parse through those logs and stuff. So being able to review that stuff up front, having the capabilities to do that, really separates the difference between, say, a security operations center and applying security to compliance versus just setting up, an administrative thing. Think of it like admin-like stuff, where I just got this log server and it's got all the logs, and you are compliant and you are meeting those requirements, and you're doing better than other folks, right? I get it. You're in a reactive mode, but if you're going to do all that work, why not do it securely?
Excellent. And along those lines, a quick question I had from the audience was, is logging data consistent with continuous monitoring? Like, how do those two elements work together? Are they supportive? Are they symbiotic? Are they two different things from your perspective?
So I'm definitely not the CMMC guru. Like, I've got multiple folks that work for me, and that I'm a security guy for sure. So when we say continuous monitoring and security, we automatically go to, hey, we're looking at logs and other things. But in talking to the guys that are compliance and stuff, it goes actually beyond that, right? So the basic understanding is continuous monitoring is, hey, I'm monitoring my environment, I'm looking at logs and stuff like that. That's the security principle. But I've been educated here recently in like the last year or so, because I've always been the security guy, not so much the compliance guy. I just got to check those boxes with the compliance guy, making sure that all my security mechanisms and things are doing the right things for compliance as well. I use compliance as a framework to build on security, but it's more about operations for me. And I've recently, in like 12, 18 months, as I've gotten more into this compliance thing, found out that continuous monitoring is more than that, right? It's monitoring not only the logs and the events in your environment, but are your policies updated? Are these things happening in your compliance? Are you continuing to manage your compliance throughout the year? Or are you doing every year, I'm gonna, all security policies, hey, re-sign that, we're good, right? That's continuous monitoring of your compliance as well. So it's not just security events and things like that as well, it's your operations.
Gotcha, thank you. All right, and so Don, can you talk about some of the differences between some of the smaller prospects you've had and some of the larger prospects as it pertains to like their approach? Do you see any trends from companies? I think you're on mute.
I was muted too, but just for a second. So just like always, whenever I have an opportunity to talk to folks in one of these presentations, I'm not super technical. I mean, we just heard from people who are super technical, and some of you guys get that, some of you guys like me don't. But I talk to a lot of DoD contractors, and back to your question, mostly the smaller prospects, and they generally understand that they can't build the kind of expertise that we were just talking about in-house. And as the company gets a little bit bigger, I think, and as they have a little bit more IT expertise that they are able to hire on, they start to feel a little bit more confident that they can handle things, handle things internally and compliance. When it comes to that, I think though that what everybody eventually realizes is that being proficient with technology doesn't result in an auditable state on its own. I mean, there's processes and process documentation and process maturity growth documentation and reports and artifacts. And that's the part, no matter how much of a whiz at security and security operations you might be, that's the part that can kind of bury you. So, and even beyond that, there's tremendous cost to actually effectively monitoring an environment the way you need to 24/7. I mean, you're going to need six people really to do that, and so that's already a huge cost. Even if you had to apply one person or two people and not even get full time, 24/7, that's going to be a big cost. Then you've got technology, you've got training, you've got recruiting, you got retention. So again, just to circle back, Cliff, I think there can tend to be a difference in the initial impression based on the size of the contractor that I talk with some of the smaller ones, just kind of saying, hey, I don't know, I don't want to know, I want someone else to do it. And you have some others that are like, I think we can do it ourselves. We might be able to do it ourselves, but at the end of it all, when as they say, when the dust settles, I think there tends to be a general consensus that all of that documentation piece and artifact piece is a huge job, and if they can get some help with that piece, then they're going to be a lot better off.
That makes sense, Don. And so this isn't just an approach issue, it's also an investment issue of how you're going to use your resources. And so it really needs to be driven by the C-suite in many cases. So what I want to do is stop here and ask another poll question. Let's see here. Let's talk about how many of you out there are confident, I'll launch it, in your security and compliance. Are you confident in both or neither or one or the other? I kind of just want to get a sense for where everybody is. Okay. Okay, I'll go ahead and close this out. Very interesting. I can share it. So we've got 33% are confident in both. 33% are confident in security but not compliance. And then 17% are confident in compliance but not security, and 17% are unsure or confident in either. So, okay, so kind of a good mix there of where folks are. Now, Jeremy, I want to come back to 3.3.1, which talks about going through logs and also addressing those. And so, can you explain the importance of incident response? Right. So now you've gone through your logs in one way, shape, or form. You found out that there's an issue. Now you have to go into incident response. And so, from your perspective, how tightly correlated does that need to be?
I guess I got to fight my way off mute too. So, So correlated, yes, definitely. Well, so you have to understand the goal 3.3, or you have to understand the goal of that specific one, 331, right? And that is get enough event data in there that you can do incident response. So the control is setting you up to ensure that when you actually have an incident, you're able to do that. So it has to be kind of tightly knit. The reality is that the control doesn't make you do the incident response in that specific control. It just makes sure that like the login information there, the usernames there, all the things that need to be in an audit log are there so you can do incident response. But in operations, it means a totally different thing. It's the amount of pressure, the amount of expertise, that type of stuff that's just missing in all this. That's that maturity of a practice, right? And what I mean by that is, okay, you identified that ransomware is happening on your network, right? You've got the logs, you're seeing it, it's crawling across, it's hitting server after server after server. What do, right? If you're not trained, you're going to be like, oh, let me grab my run book. Okay, there's another server, more ransomware is just crossing the thing. Oh, let me read my run book. Oh, let me check my flow chart. Now the president of the company's calling you. Now the CFO is calling you. Now, I mean, there's a huge difference in having this stuff documented and compliant and saying, yeah, you know, if this happens, it doesn't even have to be ransomware. Ransomware is kind of like the scary one, right? Because that stuff is going to progress there. But let's say that, you know, there's a hacker in your environment and stuff, and you're following your run book. How confident are you that when you're looking at these audit logs, that you, when you kick them off that last machine, that he or she hacker is not somewhere else, right? You know, you just got a phishing email. How confident are you by following your run book and doing the little antivirus run and doing the incident response there and saying that, yep, you know what, that system's not compromised, we're good to go, you can go, or that it's not on another system, right? And with all that, how confident are you and that person in declaring that as a non-incident to, you know, the management of the company and say, yep, let's go on and kind of staking a claim to that. That's why, you know, we specialize in cybersecurity. We are very confident that we're going to do, you know, the right thing, and we're going to be able to tick that stuff. But that's only done through not just exercising an incident response plan via tabletop. That's doing it every day for lots of customers and feeling that pressure and being understanding of what that means and making mistakes in the past and learning from it and growing with our customers and such. You know, there's new threats that come out there, new attacks, and you know, we learn very, very quickly, and we learn very agile and adaptively, and you know, we grow with that. If you're not dealing with that every single day, how well are you going to perform that function, even though you are compliant and you have the capability to do it technically? Do you have the aptitude? Do you have the experience? Do you have the tool sets, those types of things? Even if you have the instructions, can you do it in a timely fashion that doesn't impact your business?
That's a good point. Also having the depth, right? Because if it happens at Sunday morning at 2 a.m. and somebody's on vacation, your incident response person, you know, you're just not going to catch it and not going to be able to get the coverage without having that depth. So Don, you know, coming back to you as far as, you know, some of the different services that can you know, that can technically help secure an organization beyond SOC as a service. You know, what are some of the elements that you see that folks need that you work with?
Yeah, you know, it's so it kind of piggybacking on what I was saying earlier. It really comes down to the difference between technology or frankly even a service or a program, because your program has supporting process documentation, playbooks, and checks and balances and artifacts and all of that. And so, you know, whether it's your security monitoring program, SOC as a service, you know, that maybe you would like to do in-house, but as far as having a good program around it, you know, that's really what you want. You want to be able to do what you actually do for a living, rather than having to run a security monitoring and operations center, or even vulnerability management. So you can, you know, it's relatively easy to get a vulnerability scan. It's more effort and time to have a vulnerability management program and associated documentation and prioritizing of risks and checking your work and all of those kind of things. We were talking about incident response. I mean, so maybe we've got a lot of good capabilities to, and maybe we don't, to do forensic analysis. But what's the program around it? What's our process? What's our runbook? What's our post-incident reporting? How do we learn from it? So I think whether it's working specifically on the endpoints or vulnerabilities or monitoring or even security awareness training, all of those kinds of things, I think where we're getting a lot of notice and a lot of conversations is about managing that program as opposed to just providing a technology. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. And I have another question from the audience, probably for Jeremy more, and that's, given the increasing volume of data, and you talked about that, you've got so many events per second times 60, seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour, 24 hours in a day. As far as like how that is parsed, how that's analyzed, is that able to be done in real time? Is that something, what kind of tools are required for that?
Yeah, so there are definitely technologies out there that get you near real time, right? So nothing is perfect time. You have, network lag, you have processing time, you have those things, right? So receiving the event on a network is done in nanoseconds, milliseconds, right? That's what we measure packets coming across. So it's not real time, but I would say it's near real time. And being able to parse that amount of data and stuff, we have solid state drives now. We have a tremendous amount of RAM, those types of things that allow us to manipulate this stuff and parse it and do complex operations on them in very, very close to real time. Where you get difference between, so yes, you can definitely parse way more than that. Some of our individual sensors, are rated at, well over 700 events per second, and there's small little implementation kind of things there. It's not hard to aggregate up into the 50,000 events per second on an aggregated kind of thing in there. So it's not so much processing and memory processes there. I think where some folks miss out on the near real-time thing, or where the lag comes in, is the enrichment of the data. And what that means is, now I'm going to bring threat intelligence in. I'm going to bring in other aspects, artificial intelligence. I'm going to compare that event to every event this same time over the last 30 days, over the last year, or every Tuesday of every first of the month, right? So when you start to pile on those anomalies, those artificial intelligence kind of patterns and things like that, you slowly slide out of real time and you get to like near real time. But even when you add those types of things, it's a matter of seconds. Hardly ever does it go to a matter of minutes. Usually, that's why SLAs and things and detecting and notification can be down into the 15-minute mark, because the analyst has to look at it and get down to you and be able to notify you and that kind of stuff. So they're enabled because our technology is way beyond that. So it's not much of a technology challenge anymore, but it is. I understand what they're saying by real time versus near real time. Nothing is perfectly in real time because it takes a minute to cross the processor, do the things, do the parsing, and put the data out and push it, and then give a notification. The analyst looks at it, but it is pretty fast.
Excellent, thanks. At this point in time, I'd like to see if Jeremy or Don have anything they'd like to add, and also do kind of a last call for questions from our audience.
I actually, one thing, so I was talking with the contractor today, actually, just not too long before this meeting, and we were talking about the likelihood that really having a handle on security and security processes and working to increase that SPRS score, what kind of impact that might have competitively. The difference between with contracting officers looking at perhaps one company and saying, they really haven't done much, that doesn't look like they're making much improvement, versus another contractor that perhaps is continually updating the score and showing some improvements in the security maturity. I don't know. There's some talk about how the strength of that score could be used as a weighted criteria in contract award. But the point that this contractor client said was, even aside from what might be official, there might be kind of an impression. There could be an impact just on attitude And that's how he's looking at it. And I've heard that from other contractors before. So I think maybe a lot of you guys are thinking about that too.
Excellent. I agree wholeheartedly. I think that we're seeing some of the larger primes take particular interest in how some of their subcontractor ecosystem is approaching cybersecurity, and the fact that cybersecurity is not a cost center. To Jeremy's point previously, it's part of your C-level's growth strategy, and we're starting to see boards start getting more involved, understanding that cybersecurity is an investment, not just a cost center for your business. So I think that's a great point.
Well, one thing I'd add to that too is, the SOC and MAD security is near and dear to my heart. It's like what I really enjoy looking and working in, and it pains me that I have to run a company versus the SOC. I would literally go back there and do that all day long because that's what I like doing. And interesting that Don says that, because one of the things I was talking to my SOC manager about the other day is the number of requests that we've gotten from our customer. We've actually created a ticket type for us to answer how our clients are meeting multiple controls for their prime vendors because they keep sending their questionnaires to our SOC. So it's not that just like Don is talking to folks that are integrated. Our current customers are sending us these surveys and saying, hey, these vendors are taking it serious now. We get them from prime vendors through there. We get them from ours that are doing their supply chain management and their vendor management programs. And we're also starting to get them quite a bit through insurance firms and stuff. So when you purchase cybersecurity stuff, they want you to answer these types of things. And it's, how do you process logs? Is there correlation? Is there sandboxing? Is there this? Is there that? Like, how do you deal with your firewall? Is it log? Is there change management in place? Those types of things. So yeah, that is heightened. So CMMC's kind of, I think, DFARS really too has kind of grown some awareness across the realm. And kind of there's ripple effects that are occurring that are interesting. And to be honest, I was never a huge compliance fan, but I have grown to appreciate and understand why it is so important and why people have to do it. Because, I've been doing cybersecurity for 25 years, and that was all by choice. And it's only been in the last, 10 that I see organizations leaning forward and like really making it a discussion and really making it a point that even though they do things like, I don't know, build satellites in space, that they think about their cybersecurity and what that means and how they protect that stuff. I was on a call with one of our customers that is, a financial organization that develops financial software. And this CISO was like, hey, what I want to do is move into a model of assume I am breached and find all the bad stuff. Not just tell me where the vulnerability stuff, because that's what we do for them already. We know where the vulnerabilities are. We monitor things. We do that type of stuff. But they're more concerned in like, are we really secure, and like proactively hunting out these threats and help us create a strategy for this. Because not only do we want to be secure and we want to provide a secure product, but there are repercussions on things like the SolarWinds thing, right? So they develop software. If their software was hacked and pushed out to all these file organizations, there could be repercussions, litigation, all kinds of stuff. Nobody wants that. And then so that kind of does that. But the one thing I did want to circle back around was somebody asked about continuous monitoring. And I want to make sure that I said that right. So from a security standpoint, continuous monitoring to me is like monitoring events and stuff. In the compliance standpoint, what I really want to clarify here is what they're talking about is being able to measure the effectiveness of your control, the effectiveness of the things that you're doing for compliance as well. So security events is one thing, but being effective at actually implementing your program, continuously monitoring that program, providing updates, changing it, making sure that it's still applicable or not applicable or fully implemented versus not implemented, right? Doing that on a continuous basis, that's what continuous monitoring is from a compliance standpoint.
Great. And we have a question from the audience as well. It's a very good one, one that's kind of near to my heart. And they said, when supporting small companies at the starting point of CMMC, how would MAD Security suggest standing it up? And is MAD Security a certified compliance assessment provider? And so the first part of that question, I would like to take and say that, one of the things that we pride ourselves in is that we're not specific towards any one tool. We're not specific towards any one thing. And so we don't just come in, do a gap assessment and walk out. When we partner with a company, our objective is to make them a partner for life. So when someone contacts us and says, hey, I need cybersecurity, you know, I kind of cringe a little bit when all they want is just like a one-time assessment or a one-time pen test or a one-time, you know, audit, because that doesn't move the ball forward. So when small companies come in, we have very specific questions that we ask to try to figure out what the scope is of what their needs are. And we try to help them with the risk assessment. And the hat that usually, you know, that we try to put on is, or that I always have said to our company is, hey, you know, walk in as though you were taking on the role of CISO at this company. If I was the chief information security officer of this company, what would I do? And most small businesses clearly can't afford a CISO, clearly can't afford somebody with 25, 26 years of experience doing this. So what we try to do is figure out exactly what it is they need. Not what it is they think they want, but what it is that we would recommend for them. And that takes a lot of questioning. And sometimes they'll come to us and say, we want SOC as a service. We want vulnerability management. We want a pen test. And we have to back them up and say, no, you don't. You know, you're a small company. Here is what we recommend to actually get you to where you need to go based upon our decades of experience doing this. And sometimes that's a painful conversation. And ultimately, you know, the customers, you know, they can make whatever decision they make, but we try to re-engineer that situation for them. DoD has made it very clear that they don't care if you're a small business and that you can or cannot afford this. They basically have said, look, this is sensitive government information. It has to be protected. And if you can't do it, tough. It's pay to play, and that's what it's going to be. Now, there are some programs like TABA funds that you can tap into and things like that that will help. But ultimately, there is no provision for, yeah, you're small, we're going to give you a pass. You have to meet these controls. But I can tell you that there are multiple ways, and MAD Security employs multiple options for getting to compliance. Not just that if your only tool is a hammer, every problem resembles a nail. We figure out what it is you want and try to work it into there. So it's more of a partnership than just selling products, and that's why we do this. We don't do this for the one-time engagements. We do this for the relationships and for being able to help people get where they need to go in the long run. Now, as far as are we a certified compliance provider, Jeremy, would you like to field that? Because there's two parts. There's the RPO part and there's the C3PAO part. Do you want to go ahead and address that?
Yeah, sure. This is one of those questions I get asked all the time, and I think people are always surprised by my answer. But no, we're not a C3PAO, and we actually have no plans of ever being a C3PAO. Why is that? Because, well, under the CMMC guidelines and the AB's instruction and stuff, they said that, hey, a CMMC, a C3PAO cannot provide consulting, their sole function is to provide auditing. Now, they can provide consulting and stuff for other firms that they don't do the audit on. So MAD Security has never been in business to certify folks. We have always been a professional services, managed services consulting firm. They have this other designation. It's called an RPO. That designation says, hey, you're going to apply to the code of ethics. You're going to go through the basic training of what CMMC is, that kind of thing. You're going to pay the money to register with us. We're going to track you. We're going to make sure that, you know, you pass the background checks and you got the little legitimacy, that kind of stuff, and you're in our marketplace. That's where MAD Security fits. We don't plan on building a model around doing, you know, C3PAO audits. We plan on building a model where, like Cliff said earlier, where we're partners for organizations. So when the C3PAO and stuff comes in, we're there right beside you, and we're saying, hey, this is X control, this is that. That's how our SOC is built. Like, we have reports that when auditors come in, we hand it to them and say, hey, here's all the artifacts that you need. What else do you need, sir or ma'am, right? That kind of thing. So MAD Security doesn't ever plan on being a C3PAO at this point. And, you know, I'm the president of the company, so I'm pretty sure that I understand where the direction the company is going. But I will also tell you this. When the C3PAO auditing training opens up to more folks, right now it's only being opened up to those that are doing the C3PAO. So only the people that are C3PAO are allowed to go to that training. When it opens up and the more training providers and stuff go there, MAD Security will most definitely be sending every one of our CRC resources to the exact same training. But Mad Security will not be becoming a C3PO to audit folks to do that. We're in it for the consulting side. We're in it for the partnership. We want to be on there. And why I don't mix it? Well, it's very, very clear. I don't ever want to be in a situation where somebody believes there's a conflict of interest. I'm being very, very clear that I'm a consulting firm and I want to help you become compliant. I want to help you be a partner, that kind of stuff. If I was a C3PO and an incident could happen where, let's say, I audit one company and I form a relationship with the CISO and then he leaves and goes somewhere else and I'm consulting with them, and or maybe I'm consulting with him first, right? And then he goes to another company and then I audit with them. Is there a conflict of interest because he knows me and my consulting thing and what I prefer and that type of stuff? So to eliminate any kind of doubt at all that Mad Security would ever compromise the integrity of what CMMC stands for, what the AB is trying to do, what the whole thing is there, I just laid out a black line. I drew it in the sand and I said, you know what? It would be kind of cool to be an auditor and it's kind of nice to have that flag there. The reality is that's not our mantra. Our mantra, what we stand for, is consulting and helping organizations get there, not checking the box and making sure they're there. You know, I think it's a great skill set. I want to learn that and understand that better. And we're reading the auditor's handbooks and the guidebooks and all that stuff, and we will do the training. But Mad Security is not going to perform the CMMC audit so that you can then be certified. We will do the pre-assessments. We will do our engagements. We will do the managed services. We will stick with you. We'll be right there with you with the auditor, but we won't be the auditor.
I like that. And I would like to add that Mad Security does intend to be CMMC compliant. We do intend to go through, we will be going through the process so that all of our services, all of everything that we do, and we're tracking on that, of course, at any point whenever that presents itself to become CMMC level 3 or above compliant. We're gonna be pursuing that compliance so that we're in there. And I think that, it's the capability of, are we capable of doing it? Of course we are. Our folks are able to go through the audits and everything else. We just don't want to. Our purpose, our company purpose, is safeguarding business, and our niche is simplifying the cybersecurity challenge. And we don't want for a revenue stream of one-time audits to interfere with our being able to safeguard people's business and simplify the cybersecurity challenge and to have those relationships. We don't want anything to get in the way of that. So great question. Truly appreciate the opportunity to answer it. I want to thank everybody for their attention, and we will post this at some point as well, so that folks will be able to see it. Feel free to reach out at any point. You can reach Don at dsumner@madsecinc.com, or you can hit me up at cliff@madsecurity.com. Whichever way, and we'd be more than happy to talk to you and help you through any issues or concerns you might have. But thank you all very much. Have a wonderful rest of your day.